James Ryder stood on the deck of his ship, watching as the planet below grew larger with each passing second. The stars were beginning to fade, and the soft glow of the alien world's atmosphere cast an ethereal glow across the darkened expanse of space. It was a sight James had seen before, but today it felt different. This wasn't just another diplomatic mission. This was a journey that could change everything. He had been sent to this world as an ambassador, an emissary of peace. The galaxy was filled with tensions, and the different civilizations often found it hard to agree on anything. James's mission was simple: broker peace between two warring factions. But this time, there was something more to it. There was Princess Lyra. Lyra was the crown princess of the planet, the one person with enough power and influence to unite the two factions. James had heard a great deal about her beauty, her strength, her intelligence. But there was one thing he hadn't expected: the way she made people feel. The way she could command the room without saying a single word. It was a quality rare even among royalty. As the ship descended toward the planet's surface, James prepared himself for what lay ahead. His uniform was pristine, his hair neatly combed, his mind focused on the task at hand. But even with all the preparation, he couldn't shake the feeling that this meeting would be unlike any other. There was something about Lyra that intrigued him, something he couldn't quite place. The landing was smooth, and the ship touched down in a large clearing outside the royal palace. A delegation of local officials was waiting for him, their expressions a mix of curiosity and caution. They were all dressed in elaborate, brightly colored garments, their clothing reflecting the uniqueness of their culture. But what stood out most were their eyes. They all had that same sharp, calculating gaze, one that seemed to look through him rather than at him. James stepped off the ship, his boots making a soft thud against the ground. The cool air of the planet brushed against his face, and for the first time since landing, he allowed himself a breath of relief. His mission had officially begun. The leader of the delegation, a tall alien with silvery skin and long, flowing hair, stepped forward to greet him. "Ambassador Ryder, welcome to our world. The princess will see you shortly." James nodded, offering a polite smile. "Thank you. I appreciate your hospitality." The delegation led him through the palace's grand halls, their ornate architecture breathtaking. Gold and silver decorations adorned every surface, and the walls were covered in intricate carvings depicting the planet's history. But despite the beauty, there was an air of tension. James could feel it in the way the officials moved, carefully, as if every step they took was measured. They arrived at a large door, and the leader turned to him. "Her Highness is waiting. Please enter." James hesitated for a moment, the weight of the moment settling in. This was it, the first meeting with the princess, the key to everything. With a deep breath, he pushed the door open and stepped inside. The room was dimly lit, the only light coming from large windows that offered a view of the sprawling city below. It was a private chamber, far removed from the public eye. And there, standing near the window, was Princess Lyra. She was everything James had imagined and more. Lyra was tall, her long hair flowing like liquid silver, her features sharp and regal. Her skin shimmered with an almost ethereal glow, and her eyes, those eyes, were a piercing shade of violet. But what struck James the most was the expression on her face. She was not the composed, regal figure he had expected. No, there was something raw about her in that moment, something vulnerable. She wasn't wearing the heavy royal garments he had seen her in during previous transmissions. Instead, she wore something simpler, light fabric that hugged her form, her arms bare, revealing the delicate tattoos that ran along her skin, symbols of her heritage. James stood in the doorway, unable to move at first. There was something about the way she stood, her posture both graceful and guarded, that left him momentarily speechless. Lyra turned her head, her gaze locking with his. For a brief moment, there was a flicker of recognition in her eyes, as if she had been expecting him all along. But then it was gone, replaced by a cold indifference. "Ambassador Ryder," she said, her voice calm yet firm, "I've been told much about you." James took a step forward, his heart pounding in his chest. "Your Highness, it is an honor to meet you in person." Lyra gave a slight nod, her gaze never leaving his. "The honor is mine, I'm sure." She turned away from him, walking toward the center of the room. "Tell me, Ambassador, what brings you here? What hope do you have for our people?" James swallowed hard. This wasn't how he had imagined it. There was no pleasantry in her tone, no desire to make small talk. It was as though she had already made up her mind about him. And yet he couldn't help but feel drawn to her, as if the tension in the air was something between them, not just a diplomatic exchange. "I've come to bring peace," he said, his voice steady despite the pressure. "I believe that if we can find common ground, we can end the conflict between your factions." Lyra paused, her back still to him. For a long moment there was silence. Then she spoke again, her voice barely above a whisper. "You speak of peace, but do you truly understand what it means to my people?" she asked, her words heavy with unspoken emotion. James didn't know how to respond. He had studied the history of the planet, its people, their struggles. But he didn't understand what it meant to carry the weight of a world on his shoulders. And from the way Lyra was standing, her shoulders taut with the burden she carried, he knew she felt that weight more than anyone. He took a step closer, his voice softer now. "I may not understand fully, but I am willing to listen, to help. We can't keep fighting." For a moment it seemed like she might respond, but then the door to the chamber suddenly swung open, interrupting their conversation. Lyra stiffened, her eyes narrowing as the figure entered the room. "Your Highness," the man said, his voice smooth and controlled, "I have come to inform you that the council is ready to begin. The ceremony must continue." James watched as Lyra's expression shifted in an instant from vulnerable to cold. She turned to the man, her eyes hardening. "Tell them I will be there shortly," she replied, her voice commanding. The man bowed and exited the room, leaving James and Lyra alone once again. But the moment had passed. The walls between them were back up, and James could sense it. Lyra was no longer the woman he had seen moments ago. She was the princess, the leader, and her duty came before everything else. Lyra turned back to him, her expression guarded once more. "If you truly wish to help us, Ambassador, you must understand that there is more at stake here than you know." James nodded, his mind racing. He had thought he understood the mission, but now, seeing Lyra up close, he realized how little he knew. The peace he had envisioned was far more complicated than he had anticipated. "I'll do whatever it takes to help," he said quietly, his gaze meeting hers. Lyra didn't answer right away. Instead, she studied him for a long moment, as though searching for something in his eyes. Finally, she spoke again. "Then be prepared for what lies ahead, Ambassador, because when you come here, you don't just face a mission, you face me." The tension in the air seemed to thicken as the minutes passed. James stood before Princess Lyra, feeling as though every word, every gesture was being weighed with the utmost precision. The delicate dance of diplomacy had begun, but it wasn't like anything he had expected. There was something deeper at play, something more personal and dangerous than just the negotiations he had been briefed about. Lyra's eyes never wavered from his, her gaze sharp and calculating. Her posture remained stiff, the regal aura that surrounded her unyielding, but beneath it, James could sense something else, something fragile that she kept hidden beneath her icy composure. He wondered if she even realized how much her true feelings bled through in those small moments, like when she spoke in whispers or when her expression softened, just for a second. "Ambassador Ryder," Lyra said, her voice now clipped and formal again, "you speak of peace. But there are many things that you do not understand about our world and about me." James nodded, his heart pounding. The formalities were necessary, but there was something he needed to know, something he couldn't ignore. He had never been one to shy away from difficult questions, and in this moment he couldn't afford to hold back. "I understand the surface, Your Highness," he said carefully, "but I sense that there is more beneath it, more than the council has told me. I can't help if I don't know what truly weighs on you." Lyra's face flickered with something, a hint of annoyance perhaps, but also something else. For a moment she turned away, her gaze fixed on the intricate patterns of the room's walls. Her fingers moved restlessly, tapping lightly against the fabric of her gown. When she spoke again, her voice was quieter, almost as though she were speaking more to herself than to him. "There are burdens we carry that can never be shared, Ambassador. I've been groomed for this role since birth. Every decision I make, every step I take is watched by millions. My people expect perfection and I must deliver it, no matter the cost." James listened carefully, sensing the vulnerability hidden in her words. He took a step closer, though he kept a respectful distance. His mission was to broker peace between the factions, yes, but he couldn't ignore the personal turmoil that Lyra seemed to be carrying. If he was going to succeed in this mission, he needed to understand her, really understand her. "I don't expect perfection, Your Highness," he replied. "I expect honesty. Whatever it is that's troubling you, whatever it is that makes you question the path laid out for you, I need to know. You can't carry this burden alone." Lyra's eyes flickered with a mix of emotions, and for a moment James thought she might say more. But then she straightened her back and wiped away any sign of weakness, donning her royal mask once again. "You are mistaken if you think this is something you can fix," she said coldly. "This world is built on a foundation of tradition. Peace will only come when my people are united under my rule, nothing more, nothing less." But James wasn't deterred. He'd seen too many people throughout his career hide behind walls of duty and expectations. He knew that beneath that impenetrable armor, there was always something real, something human. "You may be the ruler here, Princess, but you're still a person," James said gently, his voice softening. "You don't have to carry this alone. If you let me in, let me understand, we might just find a way to change things. Together." Lyra's face tightened, and for a moment it seemed as though she might push him away. But then, with a deep sigh, she walked over to the large window overlooking the palace grounds. The moonlight bathed the land in a soft glow, and James could see the weight of the world reflected in her eyes. "I never asked for this, Ambassador," she confessed, her voice barely above a whisper. "When I was a child, I thought I could escape it. I thought I could live a normal life, marry for love, live in peace. But the throne is a prison I can't escape. And now," she paused, her fingers clutching the window sill as if to steady herself, "now I am bound by a marriage that was never my choice." James's heart sank. He had known there were political implications to this mission, but he hadn't realized how personal it would become. Lyra, the person he had heard so much about, the powerful princess, the leader, was nothing more than a pawn in a game she had no say in. "It's a marriage meant to secure the alliance between the factions," Lyra continued, her voice trembling slightly. "A marriage that will unite my people, but the truth is I am nothing but a tool to them, a piece in their political puzzle." James felt the gravity of her words. He had known that leadership came with its burdens, but he had never imagined it could be this suffocating. A thought crossed his mind, and it made him feel even more determined to help her. "If you're so unhappy with this arrangement, why don't you fight it?" he asked. "Why don't you choose your own future instead of letting others choose it for you?" Lyra turned sharply, her eyes narrowing as she regarded him. There was a flash of something, anger, frustration. But then it was gone, hidden behind the same mask of composure. She walked away from him, the silence between them heavy. "I have no choice," she muttered. "I cannot oppose the council. They hold all the power. My personal desires don't matter." James knew there was more to the story, more than she was saying, but he couldn't force her to open up. Not yet. She had to come to him on her own terms. But for now, he understood enough. "Then let me help," he said softly, his voice steady. "Let me help you find a way out." Together, we can change the course of your people's future. If you can't do it alone, I will stand with you." Lyra looked at him for a long moment, her eyes filled with a mix of disbelief and hope. Then, with a sigh, she nodded. "Maybe you can," she said quietly. "But it won't be easy. The road ahead is fraught with danger. There are those who would see me fall, who would stop at nothing to maintain their hold on power." "I'm ready for whatever it takes," James replied without hesitation. "If it means fighting for you, for your people, I'll stand by your side." For the first time, Lyra allowed herself a small, fleeting smile, a smile that reached her eyes and softened her features. But it was quickly replaced by the same solemn expression that had dominated her face from the beginning. "I'll hold you to that, Ambassador Ryder," she said, her voice firm once more. "But be warned, you may find that this mission is not just about diplomacy. It's about survival." As she turned away from him, her silhouette bathed in the soft moonlight, James realized just how dangerous this mission had become. He had come to this world with the belief that peace could be achieved through negotiation. But now he understood. Peace was only the beginning. The real battle lay ahead, not just for the factions, but for Lyra's freedom. And James was ready to fight for it. The sun had barely risen, casting a faint light across the landscape outside the royal palace. Inside, the corridors were quiet, the silence only broken by the soft echo of footsteps. James walked through the hallways, his mind racing with the conversation he had had with Princess Lyra the night before. Everything had changed. He had come here to negotiate peace, but now, it seemed, he was caught in a much larger web. Lyra's words from the previous night echoed in his mind. "This world is built on a foundation of tradition," she had said. "Peace will only come when my people are united under my rule." He had thought he understood the complexity of the mission, but now he realized how little he knew about the true stakes. Lyra wasn't just a princess trying to broker peace. She was a woman trapped by her own title, forced to play a part she never wanted. As he turned a corner, he found himself standing in front of a door, his hand instinctively reaching for the handle. It was the door to Lyra's chambers. He wasn't sure if she was inside, but he had to see her. The questions were still swirling in his mind, about the marriage she had been forced into, the political forces at play, and most of all, the real reason she had been so guarded. What was she really afraid of? With a quiet sigh, he knocked on the door. "Come in." Lyra's voice was calm, but there was an edge to it that made James pause before entering. He had seen her struggle with the pressure, but this felt different. There was something more beneath the surface. When he stepped inside, he found her standing by the window, staring out at the vast city below. Her posture was rigid, her expression distant, as though lost in thought. "Your Highness," James began, his voice steady. "I wanted to speak with you." She turned to face him, her expression unreadable. "About what, Ambassador?" she asked, her tone a bit sharper than usual. "I don't think we're finished talking yet," James said, stepping closer. "Last night you said there was more at stake here than just politics. I want to know what that means. What are you really facing?" Lyra sighed, running a hand through her hair. For a moment she seemed to hesitate, as though weighing her options. But then, with a soft shake of her head, she spoke. "The truth is," she began, her voice quieter now, "I'm not just a princess. I'm a symbol, a tool to unite these factions. The marriage is a way to solidify power, to keep the peace. But that peace is fragile, Ambassador. And it's built on lies." James could feel the weight of her words pressing down on him. He had suspected as much, but hearing it from her, hearing the pain in her voice, made it all the more real. Lyra wasn't just facing a political struggle. She was fighting for her very freedom, her right to live a life outside the confines of her title. "I didn't ask for this," Lyra continued, her eyes distant. "I didn't ask to be married off to secure an alliance. I wanted to make my own choices. I wanted to be free." She paused, as if considering whether to reveal more. "But now it feels like everything is out of my control. The council, the factions, they all have their own plans for me, and I'm nothing more than a pawn in their game. James took a step closer, his gaze softening. He could see the struggle in her eyes. Lyra was not the unshakable, composed leader she appeared to be in public. She was a woman who had been forced into a role she never wanted, and now she was trapped by her own position. "You don't have to do this alone," James said quietly. "You're not just a pawn, you're the future of this world. If we can find a way to work together, we can change everything. We can change the course of history." Lyra's eyes met his, and for a moment there was a flicker of something, hope maybe, but it was gone as quickly as it had appeared. She turned away from him again, her gaze fixed on the city below. "I wish it were that simple, Ambassador," she murmured. "But the truth is, the forces that control this world are much stronger than you or I. There are factions in this palace, in the council, who would stop at nothing to keep things as they are. If I rebel, if I go against them, they'll destroy everything." James felt a surge of determination. He had come to this world thinking it would be a simple mission of diplomacy. But now, he realized the stakes were higher than he had ever imagined. This wasn't just about peace. This was about freedom, freedom for Lyra, for the people, for the future of the planet itself. "If the council is standing in your way, then we'll find a way to break through," James said firmly. "There are always alternatives. There's always a way to change things." Lyra turned back to him, her face conflicted. "It's not that simple," she said, her voice filled with quiet desperation. "The marriage I've been promised isn't just about politics. It's personal. My family's future is tied to this alliance. The entire stability of my world rests on it. If I back out, if I show weakness, it could tear everything apart." James stepped forward, his eyes locked on hers. "You're not weak. You're strong, Lyra. Stronger than anyone gives you credit for. You don't have to be bound by these traditions. You can lead in your own way, and I'll help you do that." Lyra looked at him, her expression softening for a brief moment before it hardened again. "And what if you fail? What if your efforts only make things worse?" "I won't let you fail," James replied without hesitation. "I believe in you. You've already made the first step by admitting what's at stake. Now, together, we can figure out how to move forward." For a long moment, Lyra said nothing. She seemed lost in thought, her mind working through the possibilities. Finally, she spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. "I don't know if I can do this," she said, her shoulders slumping in defeat. "You don't have to do it alone," James repeated. "We'll do it together. We'll find a way to make sure your people are heard and your freedom is preserved." Lyra's eyes met his, and for the first time she allowed herself to look vulnerable, to show the weight she had been carrying for so long. Slowly, she nodded. "Then we have no time to waste," she said, a hint of resolve returning to her voice. "We need to act quickly before the council takes matters into their own hands." James nodded, his mind already racing with possibilities. He knew this wouldn't be easy. The path ahead was fraught with danger, and the council would not go down without a fight. But he also knew one thing for sure: he wasn't backing down. He couldn't. Not when so much was at stake, not when Lyra had finally allowed herself to hope. "We'll start by gathering support," James said. "We need allies, people who believe in your vision for the future. We'll need to be strategic." Lyra's eyes sparkled with a renewed sense of purpose. "You're right," she said, a faint smile appearing on her lips. "It's time for change." The room seemed to shift with her words, the air crackling with a new energy. The path ahead was uncertain, but for the first time in a long time, Lyra felt a flicker of hope. She wasn't alone in this fight. And with James by her side, anything seemed possible. They had their work cut out for them, but they were ready. And together, they would take the first step toward a future where Lyra could finally be free.